Welcome, everyone. I'm Callie. This is the One Actual podcast. Tonight, we have the Hornet School back with us. We have some people from down under, and we're going to discuss a topic that I've been the most challenged by and enjoyed the most, and I've had some of the best and worst experiences in, and that is being a flight lead and the lessons that we've learned trying to do it. I think oftentimes we think of DCS and we think of maybe how we learned these things, and the people who see what we do or come in, they don't see the mistakes we've made or the lessons that we've learned or the critiques we've gotten in debriefs. So I want to talk about that with these guys. I want to open up the discussion. If you're watching, please feel free to comment. I think there's always been a case where I ask, how I led the flight and if there's things I could have done better or not. I'm hoping tonight I'm going to learn some things from these folks, and we'll continue on. In the background here, we're going to be watching a TAC view from Red Flag 23-3, where I had to be a flight lead and lead a lane for an air defense. We'll get that started. And as we do that, we're going to go ahead and introduce our members here tonight. So let me start the TAC view for you. And then going down in order here, well, actually, you know what? Let me talk about my experience in DCS leading a flight. And it started with my first IP. My first real instructor pilot was really insistent that after maybe my first few weeks that I start leading flights, and he instructed me while I was leading flights. And it was a bit intimidating, and it was kind of a lot because I didn't know a lot of the admin side. I didn't know a lot of the, things that I needed to know to be a good wingman, like how to aero refuel perfectly, or, doing the pattern and being walked through that while we, were flying in real time. So it was a lot. And then when we started One Actual, August of 2022, I became a flight lead almost permanently. And I've had a number of challenges that took place anywhere from doing air to ground with JTACs and doing close air support, air to air, as you're going to see in this TAC view. And I've also had to train pilots and get them up to speed. So I've made plenty of mistakes. I think I've improved from them. And, I'm curious about what other people's experiences are. So, Echo, what has been your experience in leading flights?
It's interesting that you asked me that. And first of all, just want to thank you for including us in your podcast once again. I'm Echo from the Hornet School. And if you're not familiar with the Hornet School is, we are not a squadron, we're a school, of course, and we train those that are new to DCS, new to flying the Hornet, and we get you prepared for squadron life. So we teach you just the fundamentals, the basics of flying the Hornet, getting your jets cold started, getting you to learn your navigational tools, teach you how to land on a carrier, and all that's good stuff. So if anyone's interested in learning how to fly your Hornet better, look us up.
There's a link in the description.
Awesome. Okay, so my story, I would say back in 2019, 2020 maybe, I joined my first squadron, and it was a lot of fun. I was still pretty new to multiplayer, pretty new to flying the Hornet, and immediately, maybe I would say 3 months into joining the squadron, they were looking for COs to run squadrons, and they asked me to do it because there's nobody else to do it. So reluctantly, I said I would do it. So I had this huge learning curve in front of me to not only learn to fly my jet, not only to learn how to deploy my weapons. We were a Hornet Marine squadron, tasked mostly for doing strike work. So I had to learn how to deploy my weapons, and then they asked me to be the CO of this group, which of course I had no idea what I was doing. And of course, as CO, you're usually the flight lead. So I really had no experience in doing that. So essentially, I just had to make it all up, just based on observing what other people were doing in our squadron, just kind of learning to see how they did things. And yeah, it was kind of atrocious and challenging. But the more I did it, the more I became more comfortable doing it. I can't say I was perfect because I still wasn't sure if I was doing anything right. But
There's no
I think
perfect flight, man.
That's true. There's no perfect flight. But,
So how long have you been doing it?
Well, I'm not actively in a squadron right now.
Okay.
And haven't been within the last maybe year and a half. So I only did it for maybe a year. And then, yeah, things just kind of changed, and I really wasn't active in a squadron where I was doing a lot of missions. It was a lot of just kind of quick missions, things like that. So done a little bit of flight lead during that, but not a whole lot.
Got it.
But that being said, I'm really looking forward to hearing from these other gentlemen here who sound to me like they have a lot of experience. So I will pass on to the next person.
So, Fett, why don't you share with us what your experience has been and how much time you spent being a flight lead in DCS?
Well, actually, I'm still kind of learning. In my squadron, I've only been flying for, well, yeah, that's true. But I've only been flying for about a year or so. So only in the last, I'd say 6 months have I really had any kind of confidence to lead flights. Thankfully, teaching over at the Hornet School has been super helpful for me, just working on all my basics constantly. So you get really good at them the more you do them, it turns out. But with my squadron, they keep throwing me into flight leads when I'm not expecting it, which is always the most fun. When you're sitting back, watching a little PowerPoint presentation, you think everything's going to be a chill night, and all of a sudden, you're the guy who's got to deal with all the helmet fires. So it's been a fun experience, though, learning to do everything all at once and communicating it clearly and concisely without, overloading your wingmen, because I have a tendency to do that. But also, I don't want to starve them of information either. So it's a tightrope balance, I guess. But yeah, I've been really enjoying it.
Yeah. Nice. And Gilligan, how about you? How long have you been doing it, and what's been your experience?
Yeah, so my experience as a flight lead, I joined ANZUS. It's probably my first ever real flight sim group, 2021.
And that's an Australian group.
Australian group, yeah, primarily Australian based with members all over the place. Yeah, I've been doing DCS since the days it was in a standalone box, and the thing you could buy was What Hog or the Black Shark. In 2021, decided to get back into it. Built a computer especially for it. Went looking for a multiplayer online experience. So I've been doing flight sims for decades, but it's the first time I've really done any proper multiplayer stuff. I found ANZUS; they were the best fit. Yeah, was keen on flying Hornets. So I found my way into the Hornet Squadron, and the Hornet's obviously very popular in Australia. I think it's popular in general because it tends to be ED's sort of flagship product. But there's an extra affection for it here in Australia because obviously we had it in service for 30 odd years. So the Hornet Squadron at ANZUS is the most numerous out of the lot. So as it turns out, we're the ones that find ourselves being able to mount a 4-ship more often than the other units in our group. And with that, we needed you need people who can lead 4 ships. So obviously with having, think about it now, over a decades of experience with DCS made me one of the more experienced people. So before you know it, I find myself being tapped on the shoulder for flight leads more often. Our Hornet CO, when shortly after I started, our Hornet CEO said, "Yep, okay, it's time to pass the baton on to someone else. So I need a break." And I got tapped on the shoulder to do that job. So in a short amount of time, I found myself as the CEO of the Hornet Squadron at ANZUS. And so, leading the biggest group meant that you had to put yourself in charge of 4 ships all the time. So it's been rewarding. My my nickname, or call sign, I call it that, was given to me by the ANZUS guys as a result of leading a 4-ship one day. I was too busy worrying about everyone else that I got completely lost and landed at the wrong air base. So call sign review board was convened, and I have to say I was quite relieved when Gilligan was chosen, because there were a couple other options there that were far less appealing. So I always say being a flight leader is like flying 4 planes at once. So it's definitely what happened to me on that day.
It can be.
Fortunate enough to have Thumper with us as well. He's actually the CEO of the Hornet Squadron.
Nice.
Now I managed to hand that lit stick of dynamite off to him.
Yeah, I mean,
it said no.
It can be, and you're going to oftentimes be task saturated yourself and dealing with people who are. But we'll get into more of that. Shaker, how are you doing tonight?
Good, man. Appreciate you having us again. Same thing. My experience is kind of like FET and Echo all kind of mixed in. So I started last year into DCS, and when I started it, I said I was going to take it seriously and really want to get good at one thing first before jumping all over. So I joined a squadron, and those guys, they were good in the beginning, and they were Hornet guys for a while, so they had shortly left for the 15 when it came out. So I slowly became one of the more senior guys in our Hornet Squadron, and shortly after I started flight leading, and I was like a junior instructor pilot at the time. So I didn't know everything, but I made sure that in between flights and things where I had to actually like train people on, I knew what I was doing first. And it was like a trial by fire, but I feel like it helps me learn and teach at the same time. And I kind of just been hitting that hard and making sure that, you know, I'm teaching people the right things and not just faking it till I make it kind of thing. And, you know, I've learned some good, I've learned from the bad, and it's really helped me out as a flight lead and trying to help other people out as well. And, you know, teaching them and at the same time leading them through mission flights at the same time. So it's been good. And, you know, I came to the Hornet School to try to give back to them because I really liked what they did for everybody, and they still continue to do so. I reached out to Echo, said, "Hey, if you need anyone for help, let me know. Whatever it is, I can give you a hand with." And it's kind of how I ended up with the Hornet School as well. So it's been really good so far.
Nice. And Thumper, since you are the CO, I guess you're the best for last, right?
I don't know about best. Last, definitely. I started flight sims when I was a kid. The PC wasn't even invented yet. It was on a Tandy TRS-80 Model 3.
Hey, I had one of those.
That'll give you an idea. Yeah, there you go. Oh, so you're as old as me.
Yes. They called them the Trash 80, didn't they?
Pretty much. You nailed it.
Yeah.
And so I've been flying flight sims since I was a little kid, and then I did a little bit as a private pilot as well, which as Gilligan does as well. But that didn't last me long because it was very, very expensive. And I realized fairly quickly that no one was going to give me the keys to a plane that I actually looked forward to flying, like something with an afterburner. So Sims were the next best option. But Sims at the time, as you all remember, they were nothing like Sims today.
No.
And I found other things, got busy in life, you know, found racing and that sort of stuff, and sort of forgot about airplanes for a little while. And then one day I chanced upon this thing called DCS, and it was right about the same time. I had tried things like Flanker and those old games, but as we said, they weren't like the Sims are today. I chanced upon DCS, started it, and it was right at the same time that I tried my first VR headset. And so my first experience in DCS was actually in VR, and it just reset my levels. It blew me away completely, and all of a sudden I was addicted to DCS, and I was buying bigger computers and VR headsets and HOTAS and all sorts of crap, and I was right back into it straight away. But exclusively in single player. I'm not really a social media type of chap, so
I'm glad I have you on a podcast.
Hadn't even occurred to me. Yeah. Well, to give you an idea, when I'd been flying for a few years, shortly after I started with DCS, the FA-18 came out, and I jumped into that and absolutely loved it. And only about a year ago, I think, Gilligan, I found ANZUS through another friend who was involved in ANZUS and said, come and give this multiplayer gig a go. And I did, and it opened my eyes to a whole new world that I didn't realize existed. So, a year ago is when I first knew what Discord was. I didn't even know what that was at the time. So I was really living under a rock. Founder absolutely loved it. Particularly enjoyed the side of planning missions and that sort of stuff. And at the time, I was probably the most junior member, flying a lot with Gilligan, actually, as my flight lead. And I got more and more involved in mission planning. And I found I enjoyed that quite a bit. I liked, creating the plan, then right down to making the knee boards and making all the stuff. It was lots of fun, and it gave me an understanding of the mission that was much more complete than if I just showed up and tried to fly it or read a brief and tried to fold into it.
And most importantly, it saved me from having to do it. So
I think that's why I rapidly became your favorite.
Yeah. Well, you touched on something here. Flying the Hornet has got such good systems that if you're not flying it in a challenge and you just go take off and you drop a bomb and you do something and you enjoy it, hey, I don't judge. That's no problem. Me personally, I was bored. And it wasn't until I got into the challenge of working with other people that I really got motivated and wanted to dig in. So that transition that you're talking about for me was night and day to, I'll admit this, I really don't do anything else but DCS right now. Like I used to do some other gaming, and I'm just so focused on, One Actual is a community that requires a lot of attention, but also I want to do a good job as a flight lead and as a community member. So I like that particular challenge. I like being there and doing teamwork.
Yeah, 100% agree. When I first started with ANZUS, obviously I was a -2, -4, that kind of thing. And I really didn't know my way around. Even though I knew the jet well, I had no idea about comms, none of this sort of stuff. It was all very new to me. But as I got involved in planning, then obviously it became necessary sometimes to lead a two-ship here or there because the plan required it. And so Gilligan started tasking me to lead flights. And to be frank, I didn't know what I was doing. I knew the jet well, but I didn't know how to lead some other bloke in a jet, didn't know his or her proficiency or, what their skill sets were or how to utilize them best. And to a large extent, that's still true, even though now the familiarity, makes it a little bit easier to do, and getting to know people in the squadron assists also in planning the various things that people might be good or not so good at. But it's a learning experience every time. And very much like you said earlier, Callie, we tend to learn DCS backwards. We learn by crashing into stuff and failing and getting stuff wrong. And because we get to press reset and do it again.
Yeah.
And there's less of that in a multiplayer environment, because if you stuff it up, then you're going to wreck everybody else's flight as well. So it does add a little bit more of a need to be responsible with what you're doing, and I quite enjoy that. It adds a dimension that otherwise simulators can't give you. And it's the same in racing. You're always going to be faster in the simulator because if you hit the wall, it doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
Exactly.
This is very much so in what we do. If you stuff it up, well, you just press reset and go again. But if you've got 10, 15 guys, sometimes in ANZUS, because we were quite strong in Hornets for a while, and we would have upwards of 20 planes or 16 planes, four ships.
And they're
And
depending on
everyone's
you.
asking you, absolutely. And
Yeah.
they're all asking you, what do I do? And every single one's got their own helmet fire. Well, gee, that does actually convey some responsibility, and that makes the gaming less of a game and much more of a challenge. I love that.
The other thing is on our Sunday night ops, if you get shot down, then that's it. You're not allowed to rejoin. Nothing sucks worse than sitting around waiting for everyone else to land after you've been smacked like 15 minutes into a mission. So
Yeah.
Quite right.
Get it
Few
right.
nights doing some SAM training that ended up like that in the squad, where I sit there waiting for everyone else to come back.
Well, and your skills become important, and not just how to bomb something or how to go PvP air to air or whatever. Your admin skills matter. Your proficiency as a wingman matters. And in fact, what I'd like to do is I want to jump into the biggest lesson I have learned. I think it's the most important thing that I have figured out. It's the thing that I tell people all the time, and I am constantly striving to achieve this. So I think we'll circle back and we'll get to some of the admin things about, you must be the master of the admin skills and being a smooth stick and thinking ahead. But I want to talk about my very biggest lesson and the thing I think that carries the most weight to me, and we'll see what you guys think. But you guys have heard of time compression, right?
Yeah, definitely.
When things start happening really fast, and in the aviate, navigate, communicate, concept, the first thing that most people dump when time compression happens and their task saturation gets overflowed or their pilot bucket is now full, they start dumping comms, right? And so now you don't know what's happening, and your wingman is struggling, and you're struggling, and there's issues. The biggest thing I have found is to slow down. And I mean, like, literally take the time and space that a jet should offer you. It's a standoff weapon. And no matter what's happening or how chaotic it is, I have found that if I don't accept the situation I'm in, and I take the time to give myself more time and space. Maybe I need to disengage. Maybe I need to, if I'm going to land, let's not try to descend from 30,000 feet and land at the runway that's 10 miles away. Let's push out another 20 miles, come back, do a nice descent, give my wingman on a FAM flight an easy flight, a nice descent as I talk him in, tell him what I'm going to do ahead of time. So I'm trying to slow down his mind. I'm saying, hey, we're going to turn down into this valley. We're going to level out. We're going to have about 20 miles before we get there in a nice straight line. And then we're going to do an overhead break, and we're going to talk about that. And I think it's really important that, you use whatever experience you have, whatever tools you can use, and we'll talk more about tools, but really just not accepting the situation for what it is. And, in my mind, really being a flight lead and taking that challenge on and making sure that you set yourself as a flight and each individual wingman up. And I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on that particular concept.
It almost sounds like you were just... Oh, go ahead, Gilligan. Go ahead.
I was going to say what you're describing there is essentially multitasking. And Thumper docked me. I've got my commercial license now. I've gone past the private license. And so as you look at this in real life when they talk about human factors, so you've got a part of your pilot training is understanding the limits of human beings. So I know apparently as men we're no good at multitasking, but apparently it's people in general. Nobody is actually good at multitasking. So people who do appear to be good at multitasking, what they're actually doing is just triaging everything really well and prioritizing what they've got to do next. So when you're in a Hornet, because these simulations are becoming very realistic, then what's true in real life is very relevant in the sim. So when you're in a Hornet flying it by yourself, you've got a lot of multitasking to do. And then when you find yourself the leader of a force ship, it compounds by much more than 4 times. So
It's a
definitely,
lot.
definitely when it comes to multitasking, you've got to triage it. You've got to you've got to get ahead of the jet. So the other thing that you were describing there is something that pilots refer to in real life as hanging off the tailplane or getting behind the jet. You've got to be ahead of the jet. You want to fence people in at the right time. You want to get your frequency switches out correctly. You want to get people into the right formation ahead of time. When you do your startup, you want to get the jet ready and have your laser codes and your JDAM coordinates and your flight sequence and everything checked ahead of time and know what frequencies you want to be on. And at ANZUS,
So that when your guys ask you, you can tell them. That's right, exactly right.
You can tell them, and you just get ahead of the jet, minimize the amount of work that you have to do. And the other thing we've got at ANZUS, we're really lucky, is we have human controllers. Some people just, we've got one guy's an absolute bookworm. He's not a controller in real life. And then we're fortunate enough, we've got a couple of RAAF controllers. So even just getting ahead of the jet in terms of getting your takeoff and taxi clearance ahead of time and getting everyone on the correct transponder frequency and all that sort of stuff. It starts from the moment you start starting up the jet. You want to get ahead of everything.
We do close air support with real JTACs. And we have to fly to their standard to give them positive reps. We got some guys that are deployed and, they get training and evaluation and we don't want to mess them up. So we work really hard to do that. And, some of the lessons I've learned is there's a check-in. And that check-in is, it's done in order. And there's a format to it. And I make sure I write that down before I take off in the jet. I clarify what my wingmen have, that they've got the right loadout. And that way I'm not trying to figure that out when I take off. And that's just pre-canned. And when I get there, I already know what I'm going to say. It's on my little dry erase board that I use. Just like if I'm going to bring a flight back to land on the deck, before we even check in on the radio, I'm going to make sure they've got the BRC. I'm going to make sure they've got the course line set. I'm going to make sure their hook is down. We're going to have all of the pre-baked things we can do so that nobody gets behind in that. Do you guys have any examples of some flights you've done where you've had either get behind the jet or some tricks you use to keep ahead of a situation like that?
I was going to say, it was like before you were describing my little training last night where I started off good, and it was, I'm on top of everything, I only had one wingman too. It wasn't like I'm with a big flight.
Right.
But, I'm on top of everything. We're doing good. And it was more casual night, which kind of helped take a little bit of the pressure off. But we get up and they had loaded up kind of a fun mission. And in doing so, one of the waypoints said target. It wasn't. If you looked at your kneeboards, you followed the plan, you would know, look at the sequence. You're not at the target yet. It's just obviously someone mislabeled it.
Little things can cause big problems, man.
Oh man, and especially when again the pressure's on. I'm trying to do good. I want to impress the guys in my squad. I'm with one of the higher ups. I want to do my best, and I felt like I was doing good. And we hit this point, and I felt it. Immediately it started to the helmet fire started. I'm shuffling through knee boards. I'm, trying to find waypoints, and I felt it coming. And my trick last night, it seemed to work. And I don't want to speak for, my grade because he never gave me one. So I don't want to say I did great, but I think I did okay. I slowed down. It was immediately and granted, like I said, it was a casual night, but it gave me at least the time to say, hang on, let's just go in a quick orbit. Let me figure this out. And it took me, all of 20 seconds when I had that kind of pressure off a little bit to just, okay, there's my sequence. There's where I'm at. No, we need to go here. Cool. I got it sorted out. And then we were back on track. But I felt it coming. And I think for me, it was as soon as you feel the helmet fire starting, find some way to I think Gilligan, I think it was you saying it perfectly, where it's not multitasking. You're not doing two things at once. It's triage. It's being able to organize. Good people multitask. It's organization more than anything. So it's taking that moment to just slow down, organize your brain, execute.
Now for me, I'm a high energy person and I can just get ramped up, whether I'm racing a real car or bicycles like I have. And for me, the thing that's always been successful is to calm down, take a deep breath, and just try to turn everything off around me. And it's interesting. And I'm glad you said that, because even if it was a high pressure moment and like we had a troops in contact and things are going wrong, it could take us a minute, let's say, which is forever in a combat situation in a fighter jet sometimes, to get, a wingman issue done that's, slowing you down. Their pod isn't working. The grid isn't entering right. Who knows, right? Something that interrupts your flow and slows you down and disrupts your planning and thinking, and any little thing can do that, right? But taking the time and circling around, like you said, 20 seconds, a minute, is going to save you so much time and stress and more errors down the road. And that's where I'm talking about taking that time and space. So that's a really good example. And I think, I've done that when I've had wingmen who've had problems, or I've even had to shove a wingman off who couldn't do it. And we're going to put him over here in a safe space, and then we're going to come and do our stuff, and then we're going to get back to him. Right. So that's a great example. Anybody else got more like that?
I feel like some of my best tricks for me that have helped in situations like FET and that you guys have been through before is, as a lead, I use autopilot a lot.
Oh, God.
And
Yeah.
it's just one thing that is, you obviously have to know where you're going, but when you can just have autopilot on, your hands free, you can look around your systems or your knee boards or the plan, or help other guys that may have issues. That takes the pressure off of you at the same time from drifting off, going too fast, or losing everybody. And that's just one extra calming thing that you can do to put out that fire in your own cockpit, let alone everyone else's that you're flying with.
Autopilot is the biggest thing I teach people when we're holding a point. Use your barometric altitude hold, use your auto throttle to back down to endurance. Just make some left-hand turns or a racetrack, break it down to very simple, and increase your ability to do other things, right?
That's exactly what I did last night. It was that ability to we were already, kind of level doing our thing, but yeah, it was the ability to just go, hang on, let's put it in orbit, lock it on attitude. And yeah, just like Shaker just said, take my hands off the jet for a second, and I could let my brain just focus on what I needed to get organized rather than juggling. I always use that analogy with the guys I'm teaching is flying the jet's like juggling. You're trying to do a whole bunch at one time. And every time you got to add something else into that is just, more balls getting thrown in. It gets more and more complicated. So your ability to slow that down, get as many balls out of the sequence as you can, and yeah, just focus on what you need to. And yeah, taking the jet out of that equation is huge.
Yeah. The
F-18 particularly has got a really good autopilot. You can use it for so many things and so easily. It's a big advantage and a great tool.
Just add one thing to that though. I use it all the time as well, but I feel guilty when I do it because I was talking to a real RWF Hornet driver once and asked him about the autopilot, and he said, to be honest, I can't remember how to use the thing. We never touch it. So that was years ago. I suppose now with JDAMs and a lot more laser guided bombs and the type of warfare that they do now, where you've got to punch a lot of information into the jet, probably make more.
Well, it's not only that though. It's also that there's a fundamental difference between a sim and a real jet. You can't feel the jet moving under you when you're in a sim because it doesn't. And so you don't have the spatial awareness to know armor, climbing, diving, bumping, banking, that sort of thing, which you immediately do, especially in a small aircraft like a fighter jet or a private aircraft.
Yeah.
You feel them,
exactly.
Very, it's visceral. It isn't in a sim. So there's an extra element there.
Especially if you have an actual upfront controller, whereas we're clicking on buttons. So
yeah.
So my question is, these are all great ideas and great thoughts. I was just curious to what would your call be to your AWACS or commander or whoever, what your intentions are to kind of have this little timeout, this little orbit, this to help you slow yourself down?
Good question.
Depends on the situation, though. Most of the time, I don't think you'd even need a call unless it's going to make you late with your TOT or cause someone else an issue.
Okay.
If I just need to make an orbit, it might not be necessary to notify somebody. But most of the time, I think it's the analogy of the orbit. You don't probably actually need to make an orbit. You probably just need to slow your brain down and just reset to remember, where am I up to? What should I be doing? What are the tactical needs at this time? I mean, if you're in the heat of a fight, you don't have time to pause. So generally, those sorts of things are going to happen on the way to a fight, or on the way back, or on the way to some activity that's going to be absorbing. And at that point, it's only if it's tactically necessary that you'd need to make a call, I would have thought.
There's probably something in the brevity code. We need Carr
Could
here.
well
We've
be.
got one of our guys basically lives and breathes, swallowed the brevity code. So he's a human encyclopedia. But there's probably something in the brevity code somewhere. But even weight one,
Yep. I'll give you an example. When we're working with a JTAC in a RAS, oftentimes they'll have us either within the flight do multiple attacks. So they'll give us like 2 or 3 9 lines, or they'll give us a 9 line and have us sort a couple of targets from there. So if one of my wingmen isn't up to speed, we actually have one of our training zones is between 2 grids. So I think it's 36 Sierra and 37 Sierra. And so if you make a little mistake, it's going to put you in the wrong grid and you're not going to see what you need to see. So when that happens, a couple of things are happening. One, they're looking for readbacks on stuff, and I'm making sure that they've read back to me that grid, and I'm making sure that they have contact on that particular target. So if I'm not ready for readbacks, I'll say, hey, let me know when you're ready for readbacks. I will just say nothing. But if I'm going to be delayed, I'll let them know, especially if we're doing a combined sequential, which means we're going to be combining with another flight and we're going to do something in some kind of sequence for an attack. And so I can let them know on mids. I'll let my other flight know. I may put it out over the net saying, hey, standby 1, we're working through an issue. And in a more urgent situation, like I just said, if somebody can't get on and I've got enough jets to take care of it, I will push them to the side and give them a moment to get up to speed, have their moment. We'll go do our thing. We'll come back and regroup, right? Put them into a safe block of altitude in a safe location.
Yeah, I think you're right. It depends on the situation. If whatever you're doing is going to hold someone else up, it's imperative to communicate. If it's not going to impact anybody, it's probably not so necessary. But you touched on something interesting there, that you would go on mids. And I find one of the things that I found most difficult in coming to grips with leading a flight, particularly a larger group like a 4-ship, or even sometimes multiple 4 ships when they amalgamate, is the volume of conversation on up to 4 different radios and remembering which call to make on which radio. The amount of times when a call to the approach has gone out on mids B or something like that. Embarrassing, stupid, but really confusing.
So we've got a tradition of we've got a tradition with ANZUS Hornet CO. Everyone wants to talk to you at the same time. So and
always while the controller's talking to you.
Exactly. So it's not uncommon to hear, something on all 4 radios in the F-18.
So this is a topic I put a separate line for in my outline called controlling comms. And I think we should jump into this. And there's a couple of things here I want to discuss, and then I'll have you guys break it down, because I think this is very critical. In our minds, I don't know if you know this, but visually you can process everything at once as what they call a gestalt. You can see it, you can process it, right? In the auditory realm, you can really only process one channel at a time. It's slow, it's deliberate, and more than one thing at a time it just overwhelms the hearing system. So we have a rule, and I'm very big on it. And I know you guys have probably had this. Who here has had some BSing, inner flight while you're in transit? Anybody here ever do that?
All the time.
I put a stop to it.
Continuous.
Right.
Someone's always blabbing about something or some problem they got.
Yeah, and I try not to kill that depending on the flight, but like if it's mission night and it's game on, I'm going to tell you to shut it, right? But the bigger thing is, let's say it's a time when we can chit chat a little bit. Maybe we're planning, maybe we're talking about something. Maybe he's asking a question because he's a new guy. And hey, I remember this thing about close air support. I want to ask a question before we get there because he didn't remember to ask it beforehand. So now we're getting a little bit of time compression because I got to figure out his answer while I'm doing my stuff, right? But let's say a primary comm comes on. So we do all of our authorities, strike, marshal, TAOC, JTAC, all on our comm 1. So that'd be our pri. And our comm 2 is our inner flight. If there is a pri comm, the rule is, unless it's emergency, you shut your mouth on inner flight. It stops. Because I can't hear two things at once. You guys do something like that?
Yes.
I try to do a similar thing.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. You go ahead, Shaker. Go for it.
Yep.
So what we do in our squadron, we have primary, secondary for radios, just like what you were saying, Callie. But on mids, we have 3 Hornet squadrons. So we'll have one set channel for channel A, which will be for the entire Hornets, and then we have set numbers for each squadron and flight. So if I need to talk to another squadron of Hornets, I can on mids A without going over the main band, and then on B I could talk to my flight, or if I have to go to a different flight, that's fine, but it kind of helps the chaos. And then in SRS, I have one radio in one ear, one in the other, the main in both. This way I can kind of differentiate who's talking without having to look, like you were saying about being visual. And that seems to help a lot, and it keeps the chatter and radio comms on the main channels from people stepping on each other.
Well, and discreet and
we
chat
do a
here.
very similar set of things. Yeah, we run it in a similar way, and we've got a pre-established idea so that if you need, you've got mids B on your flight and mids A on everybody's flight, but then you can find a specific flight if you need to, if you know their flight number. And the other thing that I've learned to do is to always keep all of my flight members on both radios, whichever ones are being used. And we tend to use Pri and Ox at the same time. So one might be for approach, one might be for strike common or something like that, depending where you are. I try to keep everybody on the same channel. So if they're talking to me on mids B about some intra-flight issue and they hear that someone's talking on Pri, well, they'll shut up so that we can hear what's on Pri. And so people start to know which is the priority.
Yeah, and that's a real world procedure that we weren't good at before when everybody was trying to talk at once, and that we're much better at now. So before you really used to struggle to get people to do a switch or a push, and now you just tell your flight push stud 3, switch over to stud 3, just hear 2, 3, 4 without too much.
It helps that we've got such. Well, it helps that we've got such well worked out AICs and AIPs, so that everyone's got on their kneeboard a really nice, clear, concise document of which channel refers to what. And that's made it heaps better. And
having a comm plan.
It also has injected a little bit of discipline into everybody, even the most junior flight leads, which is excellent, because then you don't need to tell them to shut up. They know. They can hear that something's coming in on that radio. Hey, I better shut my trap. And it makes it a lot better and a lot easier to control.
Yeah, the comms ladder is programmed into all the jets on our ops server, so that life is easier as well. Just climb up the ladder to get out of the traffic zone.
Yeah,
and that's big credit to the mission developers for having done that. Excellent.
And I'm jealous because that's the hardest thing we've tried to do is consistent controllers for airspace, because you break that habit and you just don't use it. So we need to get more. But Discreet says here, listen for context as a wingman. And I agree, especially when you're newer and, you might dump comms, you got questions. There's so much I can answer in the jet, and then there's so much I can't, right? There's a limit. And while we are social, we want to talk to each other and say, hey, how we're doing. I think there's a point to where that's okay at a certain time. And then there's a time where it's just not okay and you need to focus, because I think chit-chatting can help you get behind the jet in the situation. You forget your plan and you focus on that chat. So I think it's a balance point.
You got to go into it like you're going to class, it's like school, it's like, you got to be focused. Like, you're going to have days where you're not 100% there, and, we're human, and it's a game at the end of the day, and there's real world distractions, everything else. But it's being able to, like, with all these comms, like I go in, I was worried that I'm like antisocial, but it's like, no, you'll cloud up the radios really quick. But, and we get it really bad over in the Hornet School, and I'm not, saying back, because we're teaching people, we encourage this, talk to us on the radios, but like it's tough, as someone training, talking to people over these radios, trying to like walk them through everything. And like you're saying, even on our basic flights, we're just fly 100 miles out, turn around, come back. I'm teaching a guy AOA. Even that, I'm talking so much, I'm walking through so many systems. It's, I look up and it's like, oh, we've gone 120 miles. Oop, let's turn around. Like even, quick little thing. And it happens so quick, and because you're sitting there chit chatting, you're walking through things. And yeah, now compound that with, 3 other jets flying with you. You're now doing, CAS, JTAG, whatever complicated thing we do. I can only imagine, how much worse it would be if you had that guy who just, luckily my experiences have been pretty quiet for the most part.
Yeah,
I think
Gilligan early on. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say me and Fit
very early on. We keep
go
we're
ahead.
doing exactly what we're talking about.
Yes. Go ahead.
I was going to say Gilligan taught me a valuable piece of lessonry early on. He said, every time you go to press that mic, just imagine that it's going to cost you $10.
Wow.
I say that to our newbies all the time. Do you really need to hit that switch?
Well,
so, yeah.
that's funny.
My wife that with text messages, but that's another story.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because one of the struggles that I see with newer people is, I call it concentration dollars. So you think of task saturation in a moment. I also think people have so many dollars in a night to spend. And I've had people who go out, we'll do a CAS mission. There's a lot of comms. They were behind a moment. Maybe they got up. Maybe they were struggling. They come back, and now we got to do a hard thing, land on the jet in the pattern and not make mistakes. And you can see that their performance has dipped. They've spent all of those concentration dollars. So maybe a little less chat, a little more focus. You won't spend so many dollars, have a few more at the end.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head right there. I've been flying in the squadron with a guy he's retired, he's older. He actually was in a different squadron prior to us, and he actually bowed out because he just didn't think he was capable enough. And his confidence was so low on just the basics, and the time I've spent with him to like really get ahead of the jet, but also not panic at the same time. He's been able to drop laser guided bombs, JDAMs, and then now we're starting to get into like really going into TO modes and dropping 4 at once and everything. And he's kind of cooking now, and it's just building confidence with these guys and slowing them down to actually get them, confident in what they're doing. And comms in our flights, I can probably say it's just a little bit of instruction, but mostly it's been just in our tasking that we're doing. And at the end of a flight, he'll be like, I think we said like maybe 15 words to each other. And I said, all right, cool. Well, now's the time to talk and chit chat if you want. But, we're tasking and what we're doing. And he's like, yeah, no, I totally get it. He's like, thanks for not chewing my ear off.
Have you guys seen that degradation in performance towards the end when there's been a lot of concentration by people?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, tell me some.
My word, and not just in DCS, in just about any activity.
Yeah.
Everyone's got their limits. Everyone's got a bucket that can get full, and I'm as guilty of it myself as anyone else is.
Well, I know.
Yeah, I don't want to tell a story I told last time I was on, but we had, this a while back with my squad, long flight, we were out training, new thing. I forget what we were doing, but, it was something new to me. Like, you're talking that concentration, you only got so many dollars in your wallet for the night. And I spent a lot learning whatever it was we were doing, because we were on our way back, and everything was going perfect, except I had called in the runway going the wrong direction. And then, and they didn't want to say anything. They were letting me, make my bed and lay in it, which I appreciate. I work better under pressure, and it's good to learn from our mistakes and whatnot. But it immediately, I think I said before, it turned into an absolute helmet fire, and the last 2 minutes of that flight were probably some of the ugliest flying of my short career.
I mean, I've been there. I've come back and just realized, I'm like, man, okay. I think mastering the admin, so everyone bombing and air to air and all that stuff's fine. But mastering the admin skills of being a good wingman, being able to fly form, get your air refueling in, being able to maintain the airspace you're supposed to, fly the pattern and land the jet, you have to master those, because if you come back and your concentration dollars are low, you're going to really dig deep into that skill set that you've already worked on to be able to perform that mission. And I know I've come back to do, a ship hop break at the end, because I'm bringing back a 4-ship, and I'll run to that break and realize, my God, I know what I'm doing. I know where my benchmarks are. I know that I want to be at, 500 feet. As soon as I turn, I'm going to try to get to 430 feet. As soon as I get to 250 knots, I'm gear down, flaps down. I'm keeping the speed brake on until I get to about 210 knots. And when I start getting behind on that, I realize, man, I am just not the normal me. I'm a step behind where I am. And it takes a lot of skill for me to try to catch back up. So that's why I think it's really important as a wingman or flying in a squadron to have those skills nailed. What do you guys think about that?
Oh, 100%.
I think you're absolutely right. And if you don't know those basic things, completely by heart without having to think of them, then you're not going to be able to put yourself in the shoes of your -2 or -4, who might be a lot more junior, might not have that totally nailed, and you're asking them to do something that's outside of their ability envelope right at that moment. Well, that's going to lead to disaster for everybody. So, in order to put yourself into the shoes of the other pilots in your flight, well, you have to have those basic things. And more importantly, you need to know just how hard they are to do when you haven't done them for ages and have that repeat experience.
Or when you're tired.
So you can't be asking someone to do something that you wouldn't do yourself.
I was going to say, and remember the stress that they're feeling in that moment, too, of like, oh,
Absolutely.
God, I'm screwing this all up. I'm screwing the flight up, everything else, and you got to, as the admin skills of being able to like, hey, it's all good. We'll work through this, slow down. Let's figure this problem out, and sometimes guys just, it's too much for them, whatever they're,
I've had a guy
smack, really fine.
Smack the ramp, do a ramp strike, multiple attempts to land. They weren't improving and they're getting more stressed. I'm trying to talk them through on LSO and calm them down. But if the skill was higher at the end, even if you didn't do the perfect landing, you'd probably still get on deck.
Mm-hmm. Like, and then you always get to that diminishing return point too, where it's just like, there's no point in going on any further because you've stressed yourself out too much.
Yeah, there's no
and
coming
as a
back.
lead too, it's also in your communication and in your tone of voice. If you start sounding like you're annoyed, or if you start getting loud, it's going to even make them worse, because if you're a lead and you got your -2 who's a new guy, he's going to want to perform well for you. But if you get annoyed and you start sounding like you're annoyed, it's just going to make everything worse for everybody involved.
And
Absolutely. We've got a couple of guys like that who are just have trouble hiding their disdain would be the polite way of describing it. It's not good for anyone. So the other thing with the stress is we're talking about the stress you're putting other people under, but I think something that creeps up, is quite insidious and creeps up on you, is that for those of us that fly in VR, the simulator environment is so immersive that it does actually start fatiguing you. So I know we're not under any real physical fatigue, but it's so mentally immersive that it's not like flying, but it's a certain percentage of actually flying flying an aircraft, and it does actually exhaust you out. Because I know as some nights I'll take the VR headset off and realize that I'm just, oh God, thank God that's over. It's supposed to be relaxing. So yeah, it's definitely has a mental exhaustion factor to it.
so
I put a fan
Your
next to
mind
me
makes
because I'm
it
in
real.
VR too. I put a fan right next to me because I'll get off and out of my headset and I'm sweating bullets from head to toe.
Well, the other thing you don't realize is the VR headset gets stinking hot the longer it's on. So you're holding a heater to your face for 2 hours at a time. When I see them, I chuck the air conditioning on about as low as it'll go. So, yeah.
Well, okay, this might get a bit of a long story, so feel free to shoot me down. But at the very beginning, when I first found what VR was and what DCS was, I only had the Flaming Cliffs F-15, and I was flying that, and went through a particularly arduous mission, or arduous for me at the time. I was fairly new at it, but it was so immersive, and I felt it so real that at the end of this mission, where there was bad weather, I had a broken plane, blah blah blah. Anyway, eventually managed to land it. I'd taken a missile, and it blew off some of the nose cone. And as I've stopped and opened the canopy, I've gone to lean on the edge of the canopy that doesn't exist to look at the damage, and I've fallen out of my chair onto the floor, and then realized that I was sweating like a pig in a beautifully air-conditioned room. It was nice and cool, and it was just through the suspension of disbelief. It really does make it real if you let yourself fall into that. And I'll just bring you all back to the fact that all of us so far here have been talking about, I've been flying, I've been doing this, you were doing that, flight lead, that sort of stuff, forgetting entirely that it's a game. We talk about going on a transmission because to us it really is.
Yeah, I think we're all committed to not breaking immersion. VR,
absolutely, my word, it's the number one thing, and it makes it amazing. And so many times, in one of those quiet moments where you can talk with your flight members, someone will pipe up and just go, man, look at the sunset. Man, I can't believe this is a game. Because it's now so real that it makes the flight simulators that we used to play with, Flight Simulator 2001 or any of those things, even before, it makes them look like a ridiculous facsimile.
I mean, if you took the metrics of what
it's amazing.
What someone was doing biometrically, their breathing, their body temperature, their heart rate, I bet you it gets pretty high at certain moments. I know for me, I've had so much going on. I'll go into a CASVOL and it's just, the radio is never stopping, right? We're not talking over each other, but I'm having a comm, they're having a comm, intercom, JTAC comm, another flight just never stops, right? And all of a sudden 2 hours go by and I'm like, why am I thirsty? Why am I tired? Like, I'm like, my God, it's been 2 hours and I had no idea.
We want to know what one creates the biggest physiological response. So, like I said, at 77, we emulate RAF 77 Squadron. So at 77 Squadron, we get a lot of, and 2OCU, which is where we train the Hornet drivers, we get the vast majority of the newbies want to fly the Hornet. And the thing they struggle the most with was air-to-air refueling. As a matter of fact, it was a while ago when I started, we couldn't actually plan to air refuel because then not everyone in the squadron could come on the mission. So we went on a bit of a kick to try and get everybody proficient at air refueling so we can include it on the mission because, the Hornet's a bit hamstrung if you can't gas up in the air.
Hey, are you saying bad things about the Hornet?
I'm not saying all fighter jets are on borrowed time. Just the Hornets on a little bit less borrowed time.
He's just saying bad things about fuel in general.
Fuel in general, it's expensive and you need a lot of it. So, but the thing that I'm talking about, the physiological response, is you'll look at someone trying to refuel for the first time, and
it's a
they're
disaster.
struggling with it, and the first thing you know, just breathe, wriggle your toes, and breathe. And they go, "Oh my god, I feel so much better. I didn't realize how tense I was."
Oh, yeah.
So it's funny in the fan flight I used to do in the beginning, because in our propaganda we say we are not meant for people who don't know the jet. You need to have skills before you come here, which is a good lead into the Hornet School, and it's in the description. If you're newer and you want to learn a jet, all the admin stuff, they will help you.
Great segue. We've found them amazing through Junkyard, who unfortunately isn't here.
Yeah.
Put us in touch with you guys at Hornet School. And when people come to 2OCU and they don't have those basics, now what we do is we liaise with Hornet School and send them there, and they send us back, people who are ready and have those basic skills under their belt, and it makes their life so much better when they join into the squadron.
We've got a couple guys in Hornets. Yeah, we got a couple guys in Hornet School right now.
You guys, the things that you're doing are fantastic. I'm a huge fan of the whole concept of what you've set up. It's excellent.
Thank you very much.
But back
me too. Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say, me too, because I used to be one of the instructors at ANZUS on the Hornet. And, the model I use is what we call baby sea turtles. So you need to train 20 guys to get one good one.
Yes.
So you need to hatch 20 of them. Hatch 20 of them, so one of them actually makes it to the ocean. That's an incredibly frustrating process. So to be able to hand it off to people who specialize in it is very rewarding. So satisfying. Sorry.
It's interesting because you're hitting on two topics that when I first started this group, and I know we're going to be a little off here, but it does have to do with learning. I got frustrated. I think I was like 0-20 for converting potential people who came into our Discord. And I'm like, what is it me? Like, what is wrong with me? How can I make things better? And the one thing that I did is I totally changed our fam flight. The first time was like, hey, if you got skills, we're going to take off. We're going to fly in formation. We're going to refuel. We're going to come back and do full case one pattern. Well, too many times, no offense, people couldn't refuel, or they didn't know the pattern, or they couldn't fly form because they hadn't done the admin work. It's not that they weren't capable, they just hadn't put the time in. And so now I back it down to, we take off from an airfield with a hot start jet, we go in the overhead and we just do some talk-ons. It's real simple. Now there's a lot of things I can gauge by that, and there's some things we do specific, but I try to understand, and this is kind of the segue back, understand my wingman's capability, try to set them up for success, and try to work with that. Now that starts with, before we get in the jet, what flight lead, how much capability do they have? Who am I going to put with them as a wingman? I typically take on some of the people who need more help, or some of our flight leads who are in training, just because I've done it a lot. And so I feel like I would rather take on that burden myself. But I mean, what do you guys do to, plan around, other than not do refueling, for someone's capabilities and trying to set them up for success when maybe they're not the most experienced guy?
Well, before you, I'll just say I once took an hour to teach a guy how to cold start the jet, and he then taxied it into a wall before we even got airborne. It's not the first time it's taken that long to teach somebody to start the jet up. I was getting to like 45 minutes on one of our new recruits once and still hadn't actually started up. And I actually said to him, look, I think maybe you should go away and do a bit of single player work before you come back to us. And he got really angry. So, you're right. You've got to cater to all types, I suppose. And we're willing to accept anyone who wants to have a go. But one thing that Thumper...
They have to be willing to put the time in.
Either put the time in, but I think Thumper has said that we really should start looking at insisting on a bare minimum. And I think that's not just for our benefit, but it's for the benefit of the person coming here. I find that it's very, very... It has happened, but it's very rare that we get somebody who said, hey, I just bought DCS and I'm interested in getting into it. I've never even sat in the jet. I'd love to be part of your group. And then they become a good operator with us. It has happened, but it's very rare. I think the type of person that we're looking for, given the high level of milsim we're dedicated to, is somebody who's probably done a lot of single player stuff, probably actually gone through and completed a couple of campaigns, or their multiplayer experiences jumping onto servers like Grey Flag. Can't remember names off the top of my head, but those ones where
sort of stuff.
the ones where you just jump on and blow stuff up by yourself.
Yeah.
If they've spent a lot of time on there and they're thinking, no, I'm looking for the next step here. That's what we cater to.
Yeah,
and it's good that we can refer newbies to Hornet School. So
yeah,
I feel like as a squadron too, if you want to hold a certain standard, then you hold that standard, and if that person isn't willing to put the time in, hey, no hard feelings. I'd rather have 5 or 6 good dudes or good pilots that show up than 15 guys that you're constantly training to the lowest common denominator, keeping everyone behind.
Yeah,
absolutely.
They're a dime a dozen. Like, there's squadrons that are a dime a dozen out there, but if you want to keep yourself to a higher standard, then that's totally your right to do that, and the quality and not the quantity of how many people you have.
And
absolutely. I've gone on I've gone on a recruiting blitz for ANZUS, trying to bring in as many people as possible, thinking, we'll make good simmers out of them, but it doesn't work that way. So
you have to have a balance. It's like anything else.
Trending more towards quality over quantity these days. And that's another thing, is that things like this podcast, where several milsim groups are collaborating on this podcast. We collaborate with another group out of the UK called DCAF, and they're really good operators. They're able to come on our ops and slot in without any trouble whatsoever. When our numbers are looking a little bit low, we just invite a few more of them to pump it up. They've got controllers. They're that good that their controllers can just jump straight on and slide in seamlessly. So I really think that given how niche and relatively small this community is, it's important that we collaborate as much as possible.
Well, and that's why I wanted to have
snowball effect. So.
I wanted to have the perspective of multiple people, not just me and my community, and we're talking about things here that's really getting into the topic of stretching your wingman's capability, setting the example, walking them through, like you talked about earlier with, hey, we're going to walk through the brief. We're going to set the jet up ahead of time, and giving them the chance to succeed. And that's something that, I'm really big on. I try to do that as best as I can. Your individual skill and your desire, I think, is critical. And I'll never judge how you play DCS, but if you're going to come into a squadron, you got to recognize that squadron's culture, and either it's for you or it's not. But I'm curious, like, what do you guys do to increase someone's ability to help them to, in that moment, not just like training ahead of time, but say your wingman's struggling. What are some of the tips you guys use, or some of the tools you use?
Well, it depends on the situation. As anything, it's always that answer. It depends. But, many times, one of the best things that we have in ANZUS is that we have a regular every week training night, which is quite separate to our operational missions and the things we do on our ops, in inverted commas, server. And in those training nights, it's fantastic because they're like mini ops, if you like, generally. Sometimes we'll have a training which is, air starts and we're dedicated to one particular detail. But most of the time, our training is mini operations. And that gives people who might not be totally proficient in whatever you're training to that night. Let's say it's dropping a jade dam. To some people, that might be incredibly simple. To other people, they might not have programmed a JDAM before. And that gives them the ability to ask questions. And so you might spend 10 minutes over mids explaining this or that esoteric detail in the HSI, or how to do this or that, the other. And they get a lot of benefit out of that, because then they can employ it immediately. Right. And then go out and practice that skill in single player, for instance. And next time they come on ops, man, they're an expert on JDAMs. They're reminding you of the stuff that you've forgotten because you've got 10 other things going on and 4 radios. So it builds a squadron that helps each other, and they own the lesson.
Well, and that's exactly the thing that I was about to say when Thumper started talking about it. We're lucky that, especially with the numbers we get, we can actually mount a large-scale training night every Tuesday. We've been doing it for ages now. And getting back to the topic of the conversation, is one of the things that we do sometimes on that training night is have the junior guys take the role of flight lead. So that forces them to think, all the stuff that the flight lead's got to worry about, forces them to think, and it's like resistance training for them.
It gives you an appreciation, though, too.
That's the exact same thing. Next thing I was about to say is it gives them an appreciation for what it's like to be a flight lead. For instance, we've got some guys who just you'll give them an instruction and you don't get your 2 read back, and they're just they're shy to talk on the radio, and that's infuriating for you as a flight lead because you're pretty sure they heard you, but you don't know. And so once they actually see what it's like to be on the other end of that interaction, next thing you know, you give them an instruction, 2, 2, 2, 2, always reading back 2. So yeah, and it's great that we've got that training because it means that it gives people the opportunity that there's a place where it's okay to stuff things up. So it doesn't matter if you don't know. It's okay to ask the stupid question and learn from it.
That is the most important thing that we try to, instill in all of our members is if you have a situation and you don't know, ask. Don't assume. Let's not get down this 9 line and you're not on the right grid or you don't understand. It could be as simple as, I think I might have used this example before, but it's the most prominent one in my mind. We were doing a CAS mission. We were following a convoy and doing some sensor postures with them. And all of a sudden the JTAC calls in IDF. And I'm like, what the heck is IDF? And so I'm like, I can let this interrupt my flow. I can start making mistakes that cascade into worse mistakes. Or I could just ask on the radio, I don't know IDF. And he was like, indirect fire. Instantly, I went from behind to I understand what he's saying, and we learned in real time. We took 10 seconds, and we stopped a bigger mistake from happening. So I'm really big on real-time learning, ask the questions, just like taking time and space to slow down the flight. Let's take the time and space to understand so we don't get time compression and start cascading into things. I don't know if you guys do that at all.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Definitely. I think also one thing, and it's you having to look in the mirror also, is that you might not mesh well with someone that you're training with. And if you have other people that can help train someone who's not up to speed or is not catching up like everybody else is, maybe they just are intimidated by you and how you are, and they might learn better from somebody else, which I don't take that to heart. Sometimes people they don't learn the same way that you teach, or I try to adjust for everybody. But I know for me, when I was learning, there were some people that talk too much, or like you could tell they were like trying to say and do too much instead of just giving me the meat and potatoes for some things that we were learning. And I learned better from other people. And sometimes like I've actually taken myself out and be like, hey, why don't you fly with him for a couple flights and see how it goes from there? Just to kind of mix it up for everybody.
Well, and being a good mentor, being a good leader, I think that's important. Having patience and the right calm voice and a reassuring voice, I think is critical. And I think that if you're going to be a flight lead, you are taking on that responsibility. And I think it's on you to recognize your wingman's limitations, and again, set them up for success, use them how you can, and try not to overwhelm them.
I think that's an excellent point, is that the main thing about being a flight lead or being a good flight lead, and I don't for a second think I'm a particularly good one because I'm still learning every single time. But if I can take responsibility for what all my guys are doing, whether they've done it right or they've done it wrong or they've done it backwards or they're asking questions or they're feeling bad. At the end of the day, it's my responsibility because I'm the flight lead. So if I want them to perform well, exactly as you've said a number of times, I need to think about setting them up so that they can shine. And that's always, doesn't matter how good you are, how proficient you are, that sort of stuff. If someone sets you up so you're going to shine, you're going to perform at the best of your ability, whatever that level might be. And I try to remember that. But I must say, sometimes, particularly when it's a hot situation, it's sometimes difficult to remember that.
It is.
But it's something to strive for.
Well, and I've made mistakes being a wingman, particularly when I was new. I had talked to my flight lead about, some things that went wrong, things I didn't do right and had to learn. So it's a two-way street. You as a flight lead have to be, the best you can be and ask for feedback so you learn. And as a wingman, you really need to be there in an ideal situation. You guys know CRM, crew resource management?
Yeah.
You're right. You're a wingman, and I'll give you a quick story here. This TAC view we're watching again is from the Red Flag. It's an open thing that people can join. There's a Discord for it. Some of the guys from one actual community are running it. And I spent so much time. There's actually two lanes up here of a air-to-air thing, and there's a CAS mission going down here. And we're trying to prevent any jets, like you can see this 4-ship here. I believe I was leading at this point. Yeah. And we had to set up a grinder. This is probably one of the more intense moments. And I spent so much time planning, talking to people with experience. I got to talk to a real world pilot about this and, just conceptually go through what I needed to do, how we would set the grinder. I think, we're here setting the grinder. That's me. And we got the lead, the middle, and the end. And we're seeing this 3-rung ladder show up. And now we're trying to establish our grinder. I spent so much time planning myself for this. I spent so much time talking to the other squadrons that were going to fly with us, the reserve squadron, because there was reserves holding out here so they could go to either lane, because you can see we now have 2 lanes with a lot of stuff going on. That when I got in the jet, I had seen the flight plan, but I really didn't understand it the way I should. And my wingman did. And I ended up leaning on him heavy because he had seen the flight plan. He didn't spend all of his time and resources. Again, I'm not a professional here. I'm just doing this for fun. And so working together, he filled the gaps that I had just not planned well for because I was too focused on one area. It's one of the mistakes I'll make sometimes. And so crew resource, I think, is critical. How do you guys deal with that? And what's your plan for crew resource stuff?
Well, don't be up yourself is the first thing, because as soon as they realize you're not up yourself, then they realize that if you screw up, they're quite within their rights to correct you or prompt you or help you. They're not there to bag you or catch you out in failing. They're there to help you in the flight, just like you're there to help them in the flight. So that's the first thing. If you remember not to be up yourself, then the rest of your flight's going to enjoy their time with you more. And when you screw it up, they'll be there to catch you.
Just want to double check.
So we all work together as a team.
Yeah,
I think up yourself might be an Australian idiom.
That possibly could be, mate.
Yeah, Americans probably going, what the
is,
I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
If someone's up themselves, they
arrogant.
think very highly of themselves. Arrogance is probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah,
there we go. We were arrogant enough to assume that you knew what we were talking about.
It flips back the other way though too, because I'm quite. So right now in ANZUS, I'm what we refer to as an FNG, which is a running joke. We've got a couple of ex-COs who enjoy stepping back and basically going back to, for anyone who's not familiar with the term FNG, you can Google it.
Yeah.
So
something
basically, new guy. So you get all the benefit of being a new guy. But so if I'm in a formation with Thumper and he says something and I think to myself, oh, geez, I wouldn't do it like that. I have to remember that I wouldn't do it not like that, not he's not doing it the same way as me, therefore he's doing it wrong, and I have to keep my trap shut. So that's the reverse of CRM. Quite frequently you'll have flight. Sometimes you'll get a really difficult tasking that you've got to put good guys on, which means you've got a foreship of guys who are able to actually act as flight leads. CRM is part of it is, underlings need to be able to speak up to leaders, but leaders also need to know when to keep their trap shut. So I think the running joke in the airline industry is the only thing worse than a captain that was never a co-pilot is a co-pilot that used to be a captain.
Oh God.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
That's the trick for me. It's tough being the instructor at the Hornet School, right? Because in that environment, I'm the guy who people come to for answers. I have to, help them figure things out. And then flip side, minimum 2 days a week, I'm with the other guys where I'm that dude who needs, that I'm still learning. And, like Thumper, you were saying, it's being humble. Like, when I get thrown into being flight lead and I'm with a guy who knows what they're doing, like just last night, the guy I was with, he was correcting me, and totally valid his corrections. And he stopped and he was like, no, I don't want a backseat lead. And I went, please do, give me advice. If you see me doing something that, you think I could do better, please don't hold back. I'm not going to learn if you aren't going to tell me. You know what I mean? Like, I could go out here and, screw this thing up all day and not realize it. And, we probably wouldn't know until the
you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
It's funny. I've done some fam flights where some people, whatever experience they've had, and they will just chime in and interrupt everything, not listen to what we're doing, not follow along. And I don't want to say take over the flight, but they're certainly in that category you're talking about. And it's funny because every one of those people has not stayed for whatever reason. And I personally, when I get the rare opportunity to fly wing, man, I am studying, absorbing, and I am just as silent as I can be unless there's an issue that I just can't be silent about, because I want to give them the rope to do a good job. I want to see what they're going to do, and I want to try to learn from that experience. And I want to take that moment to try to remember how to be a good wingman, because when you're lead so much, it's a different, we've got new flight leads and they say all the time, man, it's just so different thinking this way. Well, being a wingman is so different too. And I cherish that moment to go back into that role and try to remember how to do it.
It is true. And it's perishable too. If you haven't done it for a while, like if you haven't flown form off someone's wing for a while, man, you go and do it. It's freaking hard. It's harder than it used to be because you got to go back.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything we do. You're absolutely right. You don't do it for a little while. It fades and disappears. Hey, listen, guys, I'm really sorry to have to do this, but I'm going to have to pull the pin.
For you.
I'm running up against a hard stop, and I've got to get to a meeting. At the end of the day, it's daytime for us, and I'm still at work. So I've snuck into the boardroom
we'll continue.
to nick off and take a bit of time out. You guys continue, and thanks very much for allowing me to be part of this. I've had a really enjoyable chat, and the time has gone past incredibly quickly, which means it was great fun. So, thank you all very much. And I hope I get to talk to you guys again.
Nice meeting you, man.
All right. We'll continue on. In fact, I want to transition a little bit here. I'm going to pause this. You guys watching my stream in Discord here? Yep. Take it easy. Are you guys watching this stream?
Yeah, I am. Yep.
All right. I want to talk about tools that I use and how I use the tools in the jet to be a good flight lead and see what my wingmen are doing so that I can, help them through a situation. So this here is Al-Hara. It's on Syria. And this is one of our CAS training zones. It's a coin mission. I won't go through the whole mission. It's not really relevant, but these are the different IPs. So we name our IPs. The first letter is the cardinal direction. So we have Naomi, Elvia, Skyla, and Willow. So this here is waypoints that are in the jet. And a JTAC could tell you, I want you to hold at Elvia, or they could tell you Elvia Naomi, which we had 2 flights. I had one jet that I was working with doing what we call our airspace awareness flight, which their responsibility is to hold a point in space, not bust that space, and use their targeting pod. So we're building some of the building block skills to doing close air support, because airspace awareness, routing and safety of flight, critical skills in this arena. And I'm going to show you why. A bit later, we had another 2-ship check-in, and I put them going from, I believe it was Willow to Naomi. So they're running a racetrack back and forth, which gives them the ability to put their targeting pod seeing here. And I got another guy running from Elvia to, no, it was Skylight Elvia. So they had their own blocks. They're going to be separated by this line. They had their own airspace, so they're vertically and laterally separated. Any questions about this? Is this making sense?
Yeah, that's pretty clever. It's
Okay.
Intersimilar to what we do, but it's an expansion on it. But I'll just say I'm in the same boat as Thumper. I'm lucky I'm working from home, so I can sort of do 2 things at once.
Okay.
But my absence is becoming conspicuous at work, so I better get going.
Got it.
Put a couple of fires out. Thank you very much for having me. I'd love to do it again. So, like I said, I really think the DCS community should collaborate as much as possible to make our sim environment as amazing as we can. So, yeah.
Yeah, we'll do more. We'll continue on here.
Definitely. No worries. All right. Well, I'll talk to you all later. Nice
care,
to meet you.
Gilligan.
You too.
Thanks for having me. See you later, guys.
Have a good one, man.
Easy.
You too.
Bye.
So here we are, and this is the jet here. I'm on the SA page, and you can see that these are those waypoints. I've got a custom sequence, so I've got a sequence 2 here, and I've got these waypoints plugged in. I'm in the overhead, and I'm watching this flight go on their stuff. They're a little inside the line. I don't know if they had just gotten there. I've got a guy doing an attack coming in, not a full 9 line, but we're walking through it. And so he's coming from here. And if these guys were in this area in the wrong space or whatever, I can see this. So I'm using tools in the jet with a custom sequence, knowing where we need to be, watching that he's coming in from the IP I told him to, that these guys are not in his airspace. And I'm using this as a flight lead, as a trick that I do so that I can have a good SA on the situation. And the Hornet has good SA tools. Do you guys ever use a tool like this?
Oh,
Yeah,
I try
I
to
mean,
use
I
whatever
think it's a
I can
great
at my
tool.
disposal.
I'm sorry, you guys both talked at once. What was that?
Yeah, go ahead, Shaker.
Nah, this is a great tool to use. I mean, I use the SA page a lot to see where people are and to try and coordinate everyone, coming in, going out, and deconflicting. And I haven't done this, but I mean, it's a great idea. Definitely put it to use.
Well,
Yeah, I was gonna say the SA page is huge. I use this one constantly because being able to see where people are in relation to you, like especially when you're again paying attention to so many other things, having a quick little reference to be like, oh crap, there's some planes, 20 miles away from me, whatever, that I may have to start worrying about soon, gives you that heads up to, like we were talking about triage earlier, like you can see that little flight over there, like, okay, I might have to worry about that. Put it, in row 5 or 6 of my list or whatever and come back to it. But it is a great reference to have constantly available.
now
The
there's
SA page is an amazing tool. I mean, we did a Case 3 mission a few nights ago, and just it's amazing watching all the aircraft in the stack in a Case 3 and where everybody is. So
yeah.
It's a priceless tool.
It is. And one of the things I do in addition to this, so in this situation, I'm not really one of the attackers. I'm kind of playing Scar with a few add-ons that are almost like being a JTAC. Again, this flight's concept is to make sure they're staying in their airspace. We're going to get them an attack run in and out and deconflict from the other flight. The concept here is expanded if I put in a course line. So in a 9 line, they're going to give you some kind of restriction that tells you which way you're going to attack from. So if they told me, hey, I want you to come in from east to west, that would mean you have a 45-degree window. But sometimes they could tell you your window is 270 to 310, and you got a much narrower window. And if I've got other flights out here, I need to know where those cats are so I can herd them. I'll put my course line in the center of that number. So if it's 270 to 310, I'd put it in like 285 or something. I have a course line that comes in, and I can now see that I'm coming in. I can follow that course line for myself. And in 1 second or less, I can look down and see where my other flight members are and if they're in the right space or not, or if they're attacking from the right heading. And when they call in what they're heading, I can know if they're lying or not.
That's a great trick. I'm going to use that because my squadron, we do the tighter windows like that. And luckily, I've always been good about, hitting my marks and everything. But that's a great tool, though, to, like you said, just be able to glance down and go, oh, boom, all right, I'm doing good. And, being able to then visually reference where other guys are, in relation to where you're coming in at. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Well, and the whole concept here is that I'm setting myself up for success when we have problems. So if everything went perfectly right and everyone did their job, I don't have to do anything. I can just fly my jet myself. I can listen to my wingmen doing their things. I can trust where they are. But we know that rarely happens, especially when I take on a lot of new guys. And so if they have an error, an issue, and I'm talking them through it, it's easy for me to get out of track, get out of space in where I am, or maybe get, somewhere behind the situation. And so by having this preset with that course line, I can catch myself back up to where everything is going on really fast. And I'm set up to be successful when things are chaotic. That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, being able to knowing when it's going to get crazy and having the parachute already ready to go is a great idea.
Right? Yeah. And, I'm going to show you here just so we can have a little more context. I'm going to bring up this flight and let you see, how this works a little bit in real time. And then we'll get back to some of the other topics. But the concept is, again, being ahead of the situation and planning for a little bit of chaos and failure. So here we are, just 2 of us. I'm in the overhead. I got him holding his airspace and making attacks. And you can see he's looping his circle where he's supposed to. He's staying on his side until an attack comes in. Now I got another set of jets that checked in with me, right? They're doing their little racetrack that I told them to. So we are, again, laterally deconflicted. We're also vertically deconflicted. And what this allowed me to do was set up a combined sequential attack, as it would be called. So we're going to combine the efforts of this guy's going to lead because he's new. And then these guys were instructed at so much time after to come from a different point and attack. So now, because we have attack vectors, these guys did a sort themselves, right? They knew their targets. We had pre-sorted targets separate. There was 3 targets, 3 jets. He's in and out. The next flight is in and out. This guy actually made a mistake and went the wrong way. And I knew that because I could see it on the essay page. So these tools allow me to see what's happening in real time. And if I was a FAC-A, so trying to be a JTAC in a jet at the same time, I can use those tools and I can have them to my advantage. So it's not just being a flight lead, it's also taking control of the situation and using that tool to your advantage. So I don't know if you guys do stuff like this or have seen that before.
I have not seen that before. That's fantastic. That's a great idea.
So again, it's just using tools and things I've learned being a flight lead. I figured I'd share that with you guys.
No, I love that you said if everyone does their job. That's something I know anyone that has learned under me will hear me say at least 40 times a lesson. But from the most basic stuff, I tell people because we train, getting them hyped for the carrier. And I always, preach like, this is just your one guy coming out of the carrier. This is easy. When you're doing it with, 15, 20 other planes, that's when you're going to start really stressing the first few times you do it. Even, 10 times into it, you're still going to stress. But I keep always saying just what you said, if everyone does their job, it's going to work. And, just like, and then you get into the more complicated stuff like you're showing. Everyone does their job, it will continue to work. But then I love that you're showing too, like you said, the ability to like spot when those issues happen quickly and, try to like herd the cats, like you said.
I will tell them, hey, you're too far west, turn 270 or turn, 090 or whatever. I will, if I have to, I will bark that out. I try not to. I'm like, hey, you're in the wrong spot, and have them look and try to figure out, make sure they're airspace aware. Cause people drop one thing or the other in that navigate or that aviate, navigate, communicate spectrum. If they get overwhelmed or they get stuck on something, maybe they stop flying the jet. Maybe they stop navigating it. And that's where me just coming in and saying, hey, I need you to turn 090, your busted space. They know what that means. We've gone through this, and it's a quick little thing that the SA page lets me do. I can correct the situation in a snap because I have those tools. And that, to me, is the beauty of the Hornet. It's a really good go-to-war jet with lots of tools.
Oh yeah, that's what I always tell the students. It's got so many fun little toys you can play with the more you learn. Like, I'm still learning stuff, obviously, and it's amazing, like, how many fun little things there are to do with it.
Yep. Okay. I got more things that we can go through before we get there. Is there anything you guys want to talk about specifically that we haven't mentioned yet?
No, we've been pretty much covering all the things that I could think of, like, coming into it so far. So far, so good.
Okay. So
I do have a question.
Yeah.
I mean, we sort of covered some of those things, but maybe we can just kind of define or outline the things that a flight lead does.
I've got a list of general things here, or do you want like the list of things that we train our flight leads to? We could do either.
Either one.
Let's start with the general. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
No, what were you going to say?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Let's do the general.
So in the general list of flight lead things that I've just kind of wrote down and take a note of, because like in the syllabus directory we have for flight leads responsibilities, we have things like you need to be able to intercept a tanker and, set up your guys for success and not do like I had one flight lead do for me where we intercepted the tanker head on. We were in close formation. He rolls and pulls the stick hard, and I'm supposed to try to maintain that formation. And I'm like, you're not setting me up for success. I'm a pretty good wingman. I practice, flying wing a decent amount, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about something completely different and setting that up to an offset. But in the general thing, I think you as a flight lead, you need to be a master of admin. All the admin flying stuff, the radios, the procedures for case one, the air refueling procedures, getting to airspace. I think that's required. What do you guys think about that?
No, absolutely. All that. And you, of course, need to know all the mission details and how to give your flight, their individual tasking.
In general, my list here, I have share your flight plan ahead of time. So in the briefing, and as we get to each step in the flight, I try to tell them where we are. Hey, we're going to check in now. I'm going to block you guys out at altitude at this contact point so that we can go heads down. And then we're going to fly into the airspace, or maybe we change altitude afterwards and they're just going to follow me because I'm doing all the check-in work. Whatever it is, I'm going to walk them through their step. I might even say, hey, before we take off, hey, get your sequence 2 going because we're going to be using that and we need to have that preset. You know what I mean? So again, mastering the admin stuff and sharing your plan ahead of time, I think are really key.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think the both you guys hit a lot of things just in those 2 quick parts, but I also think like as a good flight lead, your ability to delegate and not micromanage is also huge, and trying to walk that line without being that micromanager and not trusting your flight to actually be able to manage. So if you can give them little things to do here and there and then build on it as you train more, I mean, I think you're just setting everyone up for a successful situation as you carry on.
Great point.
Yeah, so it's funny. I'm going to show this here. If you can see it, I've had highlighted for a while. Know your wingman's capabilities on my list of things to talk about here.
That's very true.
And I know we've gone through them, but understanding your wingman's capability, setting them up for success, and like you said, giving them the ability to succeed, I think is critical. Also on here, I have being a smooth stick, and what I'm.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
that's my hardest one.
What's hard for you?
I'm horrible about. Well, I was just gonna say the hardest one for me is I want to sit there and I'm flying along, and I'll just like little movements. I'll look at my HSI and I'll see that I'm off waypoint by 2-3 degrees. Minor little stuff, but in my head I'm so used to flying by myself, or I just don't think about it. It's just like, oh, let me correct. It's a little correction, but it's enough to where it's gonna, affect the flight a little bit. And it's remember to make those little announcements. I remember, if we're gonna turn, a full 90 degrees or something, those ones I call out, never have problems with. It's the little things.
So that's where flying in cruise, which you're given the ability to fly cruise so that you have freedom of movement, right? Left and right of your wingman. So you're about 1,000 feet back. Well, 100 to 1,000 feet back. If they have that freedom, I can move the jet a little bit. I can do some basic things, and that's why I'm doing it. I'm giving them time and space to do things. I'm giving myself time and space to be able to move. I don't want them in parade position all the time. I want them in a position where they have enough freedom of movement that I can freely move, and I don't have to, have every little thing be so critical to them. But again, I want to be smooth. I want to be calm. If I'm going to make major changes, I would call it out, right?
No, this is a great point.
Oh,
go ahead, Echo.
I just want to say that, there's no need to be in parade formation for most of the things that we do. A lot of people, they're learning how to form fly, and they think it's really cool to be nice and close, but it's exhausting to do that if you're transiting.
God,
100 miles. You do not want to do that.
See, I've noticed that I always get with the pilots. At least when I'm thrown into being lead, it's obviously with a more experienced guy, and then it ends up being just that. The guy wants to fly right off my wing the entire time. And, and it's a great thing that you just said. That it's something I'm jotting down to help me get better is, I should be saying, hey, go into cruise. There's no reason you need to be right off my wing right now. Cause again, those little mistakes, being slightly off the waypoint, like what you said, if you were in cruise, not a big deal. Yeah, I can adjust a little bit. He'll notice, in 10 seconds, and he'll adjust a little bit, all good. But yeah, when they're flying, Blue Angels off, it's tough.
Well, you're spending more concentration dollars. You are because they're close. They are because they're close. Back yourselves up. Slow down the burn rate of the dollars and give yourself time and space to not have time compression just be a constant factor, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, Fit. I was on your wing close the other day. I feel like that was a shot. That was a shot.
No, not one bit. I always notice it's when I'm in the most stressful situations is when I'll be with the guy who wants to be right there, which is good because it's more stress. And like I was saying earlier, I learn better in those situations. So the more stress you kind of pile on me, at the end of the day, the better I'll be, even if it may not look it in the moment. I learn the most from it. But yeah, it's what Callie's saying, just don't spend the dollars, back off a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And look, I agree with you, Jason. Jason commented that tight formations are for low visibility mostly. And that's true, right? Like, hey, if we're going to go through clouds, if I can't find a hole, I'm going to turn my lights on. The closer you are, the better. Admin flying. So if we're flying around the carrier, we need to be in tight formation for the spacing. When I make a turn, I typically will take the stick and I will just barely nudge it a little tiny bit and give what I call like a wing nod. So just a little bit. And then like a half second later, and I walk people through this the first time I do it. Then as they get used to me flying, I just do it, but I'll give a little nudge. And then like a half second later, I'll start my roll. Right. And once I'm in my roll, I'll make adjustments left and right, trying to get on the course line or lined up with the carrier or commencing whatever I'm doing, but I won't make major adjustments without giving the wing nod. So now I don't have to say anything. I do the little wing nod. They're like, oh, we're going to turn. And I do it in the direction we're going to turn. They know that. They know that a half second later, I'm going to do my stuff. So being a smooth stick is important in transit flying, in admin flying, and if you're separated out for like combat spread, now your smooth stick is really saying, hey, I'm headed 270, I'm 350 in the box, right? Letting them know what you're doing, where you are, so they don't have to guess, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly what I do. As long as I'm smooth, I communicate what's going on, and it makes it smooth for everybody, because if you start pulling the stick too much or whatever, it winds up, bad things are usually occur right after that.
It gets dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah. And setting your wingman up for success, stretching their abilities, all of these little things, right? So if you go from, let's just say an overall plan in my mind, we go from the briefing where I'm going to explain the individual steps we're going to do. I'm going to get you a knee board that has the waypoints, the control authorities, what other agencies are going to be there, what other flights are doing in this knee board, all of the information that you would see, right? Then when we get on deck, I'm going to make sure, hey, you've got your sequence set up. You know where we're going. We don't even, when we take off, we rejoin in cruise. Right? I don't need you in parade. I need you in cruise so we can start speeding up so we can climb. And I'm going to have to turn because I guarantee where I want to go isn't on freaking BRC. Right? So then when we're transitioning, I'm going to be that smooth stick, tell them what we're doing. Maybe we're going to get front side gas. I am telling them the air traffic in front of me. I'm looking at the SA page. Hey, we're at Angels 2-4. We've got another jet at our 10 o'clock that's at Angels 2-3, meaning we've got to make sure we maintain our airspace. When I have on radar lock on the jet, I'll let them know, hey, I've got the jet. He's, turning to our left. He's flanking us. I'm going to offset right, and we're going to try to come in behind them. Oh, crap. He's turning in on me because they always turn on you last minute, screwing up my plan. I'm going to set us more offset. Hey, we're going to roll. We're going to pull just a little bit, and we're going to try to, intercept this tanker in a smooth way, even though it turned at me at the last second when I didn't want it to, right? Which always happens to me.
Every time.
Yeah, I'm going to, when we get into the AO, I'm going to say, hey, all right, guys, I'm going to check us in with, bad day 3-1, reminding them who the authority is here. I'm going to have us change the channel to that before we get there, fence in before we get there. When we get in the AO, I'm going to remind them, all right, guys, we're maintaining Elvia Skyla and we're going to do a racetrack. Somebody go north, somebody go south. Let's start working opposite so we're always on. I'm going to talk about all of those things all the way through. In fact, one of our guys, great guy, and he's going to know if he's listening. He called me. He says, "Why do you mother us so much?" And there's probably a point where it's too much, but there's also a point, especially with newer guys, walking them through my mindset. And I'm not just doing it to help them. There's a secret. You want to know what it is?
Keeping you in order.
Well, okay. That's not the one I was thinking of, but that's a huge one, actually. It's helping me keep in order. But I'm actually trying to train them to be a flight lead, and they don't know it yet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I tell them, like, when we're in the low holding pattern, I tell them the techniques I use. I tell them, hey, I'm waiting for the tack end number to go down and then pop back up. Then I'm going to start my turn. I'm going to start my turn at about a 20-degree roll. I'm trying to get out to about 4.5 miles. Like, I tell them how I calculate my reciprocal plus 30 for the commence. Like, I walk them through all of that. Why? Because it helps keep me on, but it also, I'm trying to train them without them knowing it.
I think that's probably why we've had such great success with a lot of our students ending up becoming mentors, is because we're doing that, through the entire training process. At least I know I do, is like overhead brakes, for instance. The first time I take them up and I've walked them through it, on a ground school, on paper, what we're going to do. But the first time we go up and we're approaching the overhead brake, we're at 1,200, I'm going to tell them, all right, 1,200 feet, 350 knots. End of the runway, we're going to go, and I walk through the whole thing with them. And then as I'm executing it, I'm announcing to him, like, and I know that's overboard, for what a flight lead does, but just having that like constant communication, walking him through each step, is what you're saying, getting him kind of prepped for that, like constantly being aware of everything around you.
So talking about what you said about helping me stay on task, we're going to do something here in a second, but do you guys know what a piddle pack is?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I don't have one with me right now. It's a bag they use to, relieve themselves in the jet.
Okay. So it is what it sounds
so
like.
Okay. Yeah. What I'm saying is we're going to take a 2-minute break because I don't have a piddle pack. I don't want to use one. I'm going to use the restroom. I'm going to put up something. Then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about Frodies. So let's take a 2-minute break and we'll come right back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
I just realized we
may
didn't
not have sound.
I forgot to turn sound on. Did we lose all of our audience?
I just got a message from a viewer.
Oh man. We'll start that all over. I am so sorry. I forgot to turn our sound back on.
All good.
Wow. All right, we'll redo this. So, getting back to
we were
this,
talking about how comms can be really, throw everything off, right?
Yeah. One little hiccup. Anyhow, I apologize. We'll get this fixed. Frodies is something I use as a tool to help me remember all the things I need to do to plan how we're going to get into and out of a situation. So Frody stands for formation, roles, ordnance, timing, ingress, egress, and sort. Now, formation, like we've been talking about, whether they're in cruise or trail, whatever, that's an important role that can have to do with an attack that's air to ground. Your roles, shooter means you're shooting. Cover means you're watching that target for missile launches, enemy movement, friendlies getting in the way of innocent bystander. We'd run mods where we'll have random things come in. Eyeball is if you're doing like buddy lasing. So you want to stand off for whatever reason. You don't want to bust a certain airspace. Your wingmen can fly in such a pattern that they are, going parallel to it, not flying towards that. You fly, launch, they're flying parallel, you leave, and that stays there. Goalie would be with your wingman as cover. He's prepared to terminally guide that weapon. So he's got trig box, he's got your laser code in, and if you call goalie, you're off for whatever reason, you get a SAM warning or whatever, and he's going to terminally guide that weapon for you. So these first two things give you a lot of information. The ordnance, you should know that by either the JTAC or kind of the situation can dictate that. Timing, if there's no timing given, is dictated by the formation. So I was watching an A-10 documentary, and the flight lead told the wingman literally it was just wedge, shooter, guns. So the first three things here, they had the other information from a JTAC, and that pilot that was the wingman knew that they're going to be shooting with guns. They're going to be in wedge formation. So they're doing this together, and they understand everything that's happening because they had other information. So timing could be, hey, 30 seconds apart on impacts, 30 seconds apart to turn in, whatever that is. So letting you know what that interval is. So that could be for deconflicting spacing or whatever. Your ingress. So if you think about it, any situation you want to get into, where are you coming from? In close air support, your JTAC is going to tell you. They're probably going to tell you your egress too, right? They're probably going to dictate that. And so all of this can be used even if you don't have a JTAC, right? So you have a plan, you're going to make some kind of a strike or do whatever. How are you going to get into? How are you going to get out of? Do you know where the threats are? Do you plan your ingress and egress around that? And then when you have targets, getting into your sort phase. So I don't know what you guys think about this. It's something we train to, something we need to get better at and use more. But if you just said something like, hey, we're going to be trail cover, and GBU 12, that I'm going to have you in trail of me. You're going to be cover, meaning you're set to do goalie. I'm going to use a GBU 12, right, which is a laser guided bomb. If I have to turn off and call goalie, now in 3 words, again, setting us up for success, avoiding that time compression and maximizing that planning, you can communicate a lot of information. Do you think this would be useful for you guys?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's not something I've touched on. Like, it's a little more advanced probably, but I can see why this would be insanely useful. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, again, it's just a tool. It's some words. You don't have to use all of them. But in my mind, I think about Frodies when we're doing stuff because, again, how am I getting into, how am I getting out of, and what are we doing? And how do we communicate that with brevity, right? Quickly.
Yeah, I was just gonna say end quickly. That's always the thing is not choking up the comms in a situation like this where you would feel like there is so much information to cover, but finding these ways to cover it fast and quick is so cool.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things I find myself talking to guys about, going into an area is altitude, because naturally they want to dive down, roll in, flare out, and then a manpad takes them out, or they can't get away from a SAM or something like that. So it's me trying to have them learn, like, sometimes low and is not the answer here, and this is just a great addition to it.
Yeah, I mean, if you have Frodies taught to your people and you're used to it, and you even just start thinking about Frodies, it's going to help keep you on task of, hey, we're at this waypoint. What are we supposed to be doing? Oh, how do we get in here? How do we do what we're supposed to do? Right. And that's what this tool has become for me.
Especially it's great for visual too. If you have it in a knee board, if like you're starting to train for it to use it, if you have it right here, this way you can, train yourself for it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what they use in real life. Did you get this from JTAC or?
So I got this from a A-10 group we were working with, and they said it came from the Air Force. I have Googled it. I actually haven't found a lot from Googling it, so I don't know. But either way, this is from a document that I was given, and it's been very useful. So I think they do. I know I heard that video where they used wedge shooter guns. I'm like, well, that's a Frodies brief. And they had all the information given to them from the JTAC, so I'm guessing that they do. Yes.
Yeah. No,
I was going to say, I actually had done a quick Google search while we were sitting here learning about it, because I was kind of curious. And it does sound like, I can't confirm it, but it does sound like there was a guy on Reddit talking about his experience when he was surfing with it. So it does sound like it's a legit thing.
Yeah. Well, either way, I'm going to use it because it's a good tool for me.
Yo, 100%. I took a picture of this. I'm using it 100%.
Yeah.
I took a picture too.
Awesome. So let's. No. I probably should share a link to it I'll update the links in the description when I get a moment. We'll go through it. Let's see if there's any more questions. Yes. Thanks, Hornet. I apologize. I screwed up by not getting us back on. Okay, so I'm going back to my list here. I think we've talked about everything except one thing. Before I get to that, is there anything else you guys want to cover? There's only one last thing that I haven't covered.
No, I think I've been learning more than I think I've been contributing so far, so.
Well, it was going to be a good learning opportunity.
So the last thing, and we probably should have talked about this before, and it's really simple. It's 3 words. Make a decision. Right? I have not been trained by a cadre of professionals, spending years dedicating myself doing this. I've been in situations where I was unsure what to do. Have you guys ever been there?
Oh.
Once or twice.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Maybe. So you've got people's nights at stake. You've got your reputation at stake. I try to take pride in being a good flight lead. I take feedback. I make mistakes. I've never had probably what I consider a perfect flight. I've had some flights I could say, man, I think that went pretty well. The little mistakes that I made didn't affect anybody, but I could beat myself over them if I wanted. But making a decision as a flight lead, you are responsible for all the things we've talked about tonight. You're responsible for building your skills as an admin, having the ability to be good stick, briefing your people, getting them ahead of the situation, maybe using Frodies. But at the end of the day, you are taking responsibility to make decisions. Do you guys have a tough decision you've had to make, good or bad, that you want to share?
I feel like sometimes the toughest decision is being honest with people and how they ask you how they did, what they need to do. You're trying not to discourage them or anything, but you're also trying to help them at the same time. And if you sugarcoat everything, that could be a bad decision on your part. Or if you don't say anything, you're not deciding to be honest with them. I think those two, with being a lead or training people, go hand in hand together. Is telling someone something they might not want to hear, but might make them better at the end of the day.
So I always start a briefing with my own mistakes, even if they don't know that they existed. And I try to set the tone with, we are going to discuss issues and I'm going to own mine. And I will give that feedback. I just give it honest and straight. You talk about what tone you give it with. I'm just very matter of fact. It's not personal. I don't think you're a terrible person. I'm just trying to point out what I see. Other wingmen and other people in the flight will point it out. And at the end, I ask them what I did wrong and what I could do better. Right. So nobody's immune.
Yeah, and you can't hide from TAC view at the end of the day.
There's no hiding from TAC view.
There's nowhere to go.
No.
That's right.
I know, you just hope that no one notices.
Yeah. No.
When it comes to decision making, though, I mean, like, I know, kind of keep it more in like the combat realm is, with my lack of experience, and not knowing which weapon to use in which situation and what altitude, and I'm getting better, but in those pressure moments like we were talking about, you don't know for sure, like, is this the right decision to make? And you start second guessing yourself. And to kind of like touch on something Shaker had brought up earlier, is that confidence of just, hey, you know what? You might make the wrong decision here, and it might, like you're saying, screw up everyone's night, and you might have to hang your head in shame for the next few nights. But just make a decision, like commit to it. Try to get as much information early on as you can. Like before you go up and do these missions or anything like that, because that's what kills everyone. It's just not having enough information, at least in my opinion. That's what kills me, is I start thinking, oh, is it this, is it that, because I don't know every little detail. And then you start that cycle of, well, should I do this? Should I do that? Instead of just going with, even if it is your gut, just go with it. Just make a decision.
Well, it's a learning opportunity, right? You're presented with a challenge. You're going to come up with a solution, and it's either going to work or it's not, or maybe it mostly works, or maybe you lose a wingman. Who knows? And so
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I said I feel like a lot of us in DCS have prior military background, and we were fortunate enough in whatever it is that we were doing, we got brief after brief after brief after brief, and those that don't have that prior military experience have never been through that before. So I've been very angry after doing a mission or something where I'm like, I don't feel like we have enough information for this, where I'd rather have too much information to give someone than not enough. And us having that background and being honest, open, and giving them all the tools that they need and a good brief like you guys have all shown tonight, like those are things that we're so benefit to have in our past that we can try and give to these other guys that haven't done this before. And that's just a tool that we're always going to be able to try and share with these guys, to make them better pilots and leads in the future, hopefully.
It was really cool the first time in my squadron, like I think probably the first night I flew with them, and then afterwards opening this up and then spending 30 plus minutes probably picking the whole thing apart, going through it, and not just, the groups, but, each individual pilot, hey, did you do this? Hey, you made a mistake here. Not like you were saying, Callie, not that they're like, oh, that means you're a horrible person, rot in hell. It was literally just like, hey, made a little mistake here. Let's, something to work on, focus on, whatever. It was such a cool tool to have, because I didn't serve, I'm not used to these things. So it was a whole new experience coming into it and being like, oh, wow, we really sit down and go through like every single little detail. This is cool.
So we started this discussion talking about how when people come in and they see someone who's doing a good job or a good flight lead or whatever, that they haven't seen the mistakes that they made beforehand. And joining a squadron is a topic that I've discussed and I want to discuss more again in the future, because I think it's where you learn. It's what I said earlier. I'm motivated by working with people and teamwork. Just dropping a bomb on my own, I am bored to death. Like I will just Control Alt Delete and we'll be done.
I want to do the campaigns more, but it's just not I mean, like, I know they make some really great campaigns. The AI is almost there, but it's just there's something about having a real dude with you, just like your flight back, you know, like, damn, dude, we did that. That was awesome. Way to go.
So that debrief and that honesty is where you learn those lessons. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That is what motivates me. What motivates me is to be challenged, to come back and debrief, learn everything I can, apply that knowledge to the future, and build. And everything I've shared tonight comes from my time doing that. And so I hope it does help people. Again, if you're new, go back to the description. There's the Hornet School there. Really quick, Jason, feedback equals absolutely. Feedback equals course correction. And that's,
100%.
and that's the thing that I think I learned in the military. I learned from racing, on competitive teams with cars and with bicycles, is you are going to learn some hard lessons. If you're not willing to screw it up, then you're not going to learn. And I learned so much from feedback, and I became a better person in those roles as a driver, as a teammate. And I feel like I became a better person through doing some of these things in DCS. I've learned lessons that have applied well beyond DCS and tried to have that, what I call like a high level of professionalism or a high functioning team mentality, where we're going to throw it out there. We're going to do hard things. We're going to screw it up, but we're going to learn and we're going to get better for it. So that's probably, like, if I was to say, why do I like DCS? Why do I like doing this? Yeah, flying the jet and the chaos is fun, but that's the heart of it to me. I don't know what you guys think.
Oh, I'm the exact same. Like, to me, it's the procedural almost that makes it fun, learning these things, doing it right. Because I remember when I was learning, the Hornet who taught me told me, don't go to the boat. You don't know what you're doing. You have no clue how to land on the boat. Just don't do it. Just don't go out there. And I'm like, and I told him, hey, Scout's honor, won't go to the boat. I'm a good boy.
You went out there.
Late Friday night, I got a buddy who's watching me play DCS, and he's like, hey, show me the boat. I'm like, I can't. I have never been to the boat. I don't know what come on, go to the boat. So I went, and it was awful. I had no clue what I was doing. I was basically straight in approaches. I was trying to land like I was at an airfield. It was awful. And being able to go back and, like, learn the procedure of it, execute it, and then be able to pass that on. We did a case 3 the other week, and I think we had like 12 people, 10 people, something. We had a really good turnout, and we didn't lose a single pilot. Like, nice. I think we had a disconnect or 2, but we got everyone down on the boat. And it was so cool to watch everyone, like, and I'm sure a lot of people have done it before, etc. But it was cool to see everyone, like we were talking about before, doing their job. Came in. We had a few close calls. We had a few bolters. But at the end of the day, it all worked. Everyone did it. It was cool watching it go from that, like you were kind of saying, chaos to this controlled chaos.
You know what inspires me too? I've never seen anyone say that you have to. I've never seen anyone ask someone to. Every squadron I've ever flown in, they will sit on the boat until everyone recovers. And that just blew my mind. People are there as a team. They're there to back you up. And that's like another part of being in a squadron that sometimes it just gets me, where these guys are there. They've got your back, right?
At first, when my squadron, they would do that, and it felt like pressure at first. Like, oh God, are they waiting for me to come back so they can watch me screw up?
It does have that effect, yes.
100%. But then as you kind of grow the camaraderie a little bit, you understand like how it worked. It's just like you're saying, it's a team effort. Like everyone waits until everyone's down, and then it's like, all right, now let's go debrief. Like, it is a cool team feeling.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we've been doing this for 2 hours. Is there anything you guys want to cover before we close this out?
I think we've covered so much. Like I said, I've learned probably more than I've contributed.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, this has been great. This has been great.
Well, I appreciate you guys coming here. I appreciate our previous guests who had to leave because they're in Australian time zone. I appreciate the feedback. We had a lot of chat in the text, and I want to do more of these, so I'll be welcome you guys back. There'll be more things we can cover.
Yeah, we love coming here.
Yeah, no, we'll do it again. Again, if you're new to DCS and you want to learn the Hornet School is in the description. If you're looking to challenge yourself and you got some experience, One Actual is a sim community where we work with real world JTACs. We fly to those standards. We work with real world AWACS guys. We fly to those standards. So it's not easy, but if you master the basics and you like teamwork, I can tell you that you'll enjoy it. I'm glad you guys came, and subscribe, like, comment in the video, comment in the things afterwards. I'll answer them, and we'll have another live stream coming up soon.
Thanks for having us, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Callie.
Yeah, thanks again, man.
You're welcome, and good night to everybody.
Good night.